Hot Mike with Dom Izzo.
Really? Really, Dom?
No. I like what Dom's doing.
Okay.
Dom Izzo.
Jeez, come on, Dom. What do you think I am, a magician?
Yeah, I'm fired up, Dom. What else could I say?
Absolutely. It was great to get on the field, and then Dom came up to me, and I'm trying to walk away from me. I just wanted to enjoy myself out there.
Hot Mike.
Great job.
There's got to be some kind of intelligent question about something.
Hot Mike. Hot Mike. On the networks of WDAY.
You know, if it's not about sports, I find it very hard to concentrate.
Here's Dom Izzo. Dom Izzo.
Good Friday morning. Welcome, everybody, to Hot Mike on WDAY Extra and InForum.com on this Friday. We're ready to wrap up the week in style. We're back live at the Shack after a long but entertaining day for the opening day of the State A basketball tournaments going on at the Fargo Dome and here at the Shields Center. I'm here with all my friends here. I'm the only guy here. It'll be filled up in the not-too-distant future as we've got all four semifinals here today. The girls will be playing this afternoon, and the boys will take center stage tonight after a really thrilling day yesterday where the East had maybe a bit more success than maybe some thought before this tournament tipped off. 3 of the 4 East girls teams won yesterday, and 3 East boys teams won yesterday. We will have new champions in both girls and boys basketball in 2023. Minot, you remember, swept it last year. Each of the Minot teams lost yesterday. The girls in somewhat stunning fashion to Grand Forks Red River, and the boys in absolute stunning fashion to Grand Forks Red River. We'll show you all that here in just a little bit. We got a lot to get to today to unpack as we get ready for the weekend. We're still creeping closer to the start of NFL free agency. There's some big news happening here we're going to share with you in just a second. We've got an update on Kirill Kaprizov. We showed you the injury that happened yesterday for the Wild superstar in the game Wednesday night in Winnipeg. It's not great news there for Minnesota as they continue to heat up. And we are ready for a big weekend college basketball-wise. As we were on the air yesterday, the official invite was extended to the North Dakota State women's basketball team for the WNIT. So we know they are heading on and playing postseason basketball. So we'll get into that as we visited with Jory Collins yesterday. It was pretty much a done deal, but now we know they have the automatic bid out of the Summit League. Very well, we may know their opponent. I have an educated guess on that we'll get to later on in the show. But the big news right off the hop, Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network reporting that the Minnesota Vikings will release Adam Thielen later today. Not necessarily surprising news, but it will be tough to take for fans around this part of the world, and certainly all fans of the Minnesota Vikings, as this is a cost-cutting move, much like the Eric Kendricks move was on Monday. This move to end his 10-year run in Minnesota, and this is one of the all-time great stories in the history of professional football. The guy that came out of nowhere, out of MSU Mankato from Detroit Lakes, got a $500 scholarship to go play football at MSU Mankato, was on the practice squad for the Vikings in 2012, 2013, earned his way onto the roster in 2014 as a special teams guy, and then just started to take off. He got more reps at wide receiver and suddenly became an all-pro wide receiver. Remember what happened in 2018 when Thielen had an NFL record that he was catching touchdown passes in every single game for the Vikings that year in 2018 on a special time there. And over the last 3 years has really become a stud for the Vikings with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. 70 receptions, 716 yards, and 6 touchdowns this past season. His 7th season as a starter in Minnesota after 1 year on the practice squad and 2 where he was primarily a special teams contributor. He was targeted 117 times, part of a team that became the 9th in NFL history to have 4 receivers with at least 60 catches, but saw his opportunities dwindle, according to the Star Tribune, particularly in the final weeks of the regular season, as T.J. Hawkinson, as we saw, grew to be the Vikings' number 2 guy, right behind Justin Jefferson. Here's the money hit on this. Releasing Thielen saves the Vikings $6.41 million in salary cap space, though they will absorb $13.5 million in dead money. the 32-year-old receiver had discussed a restructured contract that would have kept him in Minnesota on a reduced salary, according to a source with knowledge of the situation, but seemed inclined to pursue other teams that might offer a larger role in the offense than he would have had with the Vikings. He leaves with more catches and receiving touchdowns than every player in team history except Chris Carter and Randy Moss. That's pretty good. Yeah, I don't think there's any debate about that. He will have his place in the Vikings Ring of Honor whenever that comes, despite the fact he's going to play the rest of his career somewhere else. But it ends an amazing run. And again, one I got to see firsthand. I remember I was in Mankato in 2013 when he was trying to make the team, and he made the practice squad that year, the local guy that grew up watching Randy Moss. And, of course, this story's been told 100 times over, considering the success he had in the years following that. But I just remember in 2014 and 2015 when he was primarily special teams and he blocked a punt or he returned a punt for a touchdown, and you just saw him starting to get more and more opportunities. And Mike Zimmer loved him in the fact that he became a regular on the offense in 2016 and then became a trusted guy to throw the football to, whether it was Case Keenum, whether it was Sam Bradford, then it was Kirk Cousins as quarterbacking this team that over the last 4 years, he and Cousins had some great rapport. Outside, of course, I remember the regular season or next to last game of the season in 2019 when him and Cousins were barking each other on the sidelines. But it became clear, if you were watching any Minnesota Viking football here over the last few weeks of the season, that Hawkinson was becoming the number 2 guy. Jefferson clearly was the guy, but you knew that they were going to get Hawkinson the ball whenever they could because he was a mismatch. Look at the game in the postseason against the Giants. I mean, that Hawkinson was unstoppable in that game, and that's why they traded a second-round pick in this upcoming draft to go get him. The fact that the Lions still trade him in the division is still kind of stunning to me, but it's all over. And it'll be interesting to see who takes him, what kind of role he has on his new team. But this is, again, we talked about it since the season ended the day after that Monday when they lost to the Giants. There were going to be some really hard decisions to make with this football team, knowing how far over they were on the cap. Kendricks is one. That's a longtime contributor. Thielen's is a fan favorite. That one's going to be hard. There are going to be more. I fully expect Dalvin Cook. Zadarius Smith is asked to be released. The Vikings have so far not inclined to do that. I'm not sure if they're trying to work out a trade, if there's still some options there for Zadarius. But that's the big news to start our show. The Vikings will release Adam Thielen today, according to Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, and now confirmed by Ben Gessling from the Star Tribune. So big news there on the Vikings front to start our show today. Lots to get to. We got to start with what happened here at the Shack yesterday with the 4 girls quarterfinals. The final game of the day was thrilling. I mean, honestly, all 4 games yesterday, as we talked about on the show on Thursday, that we thought that could be one of the great days in Class A girls basketball quarterfinal history, and it lived up to that. First game, Cheyenne took care of Legacy. The Davies Century game was a heavyweight fight. Just their bodies all over the floor. Each team wanted more fouls called. The referees let them play. Century won the game 69-64. We saw Red River stun Minot 50-43 in the third game. The fourth game of the day, West Fargo and Bismarck. We'll show you the end of that one because that was a nail-biter all the way to the very end, where Bismarck had actually built a 5-point lead on the Packers, and finally they started to wake up late in the second half. Briley Peterson hit a big-time 3. That gave West Fargo, as you'll see here in the highlights, they're down 1. She hits this one. All of a sudden, they're up by 2 after that. Just the Packers' 3-point shooting was not there until late in this game. Bismarck had no answer for Mariley Simon on this basket from Peyton Newmiller, that ties the game up at 55 apiece. West Fargo would come right back as Simon was just phenomenal last night. She had 26 points for the Bison signee, playing in front of her future coach and Jory Collins here. This was the shot of the night. Chloe Fow, three-pointer, gives the Packers a 5-point lead at 60-55. She was so stunned that she made the shot. That was probably the best reaction of the entire day here yesterday at the Shack, was the fact that Fow, you saw the open mouth expression after the basket. And then, for good measure, knocked down this tough shot. That was the dagger, as Lynette said, to make this a 7-point West Fargo lead, and they would go on and win the game and move on into tonight's semifinals in a dandy of a basketball game. 65-59 was the final, and they are on to the Class A semifinals, in which should be a fantastic matchup coming up later tonight against Grand Forks Red River. And they played the game prior to the Packers, and boy, what a showing it was for Jossie Schiller and the Riders. We'll show you that here, is what Red River did yesterday was phenomenal. Schiller, who, if you have not seen her play, and they have been at state the last couple of years, you're missing out on one of the best players in the state. Of course, she's committed to play basketball at the University of North Dakota. She was dynamic yesterday against the Minot Studs. All the attention on Maggie Fricky and Lily Bell, the reigning state champs who won it as 8th graders last year. They were just all out of sorts yesterday. This one from Cassidy O'Halloran, a huge three that put Red River on top. And then for good measure, Schiller driving and scoring. They held the Majettes to 43 points. As Red River wins it, 50-43 is the final. So that is our second semifinal coming up here later today. It'll be Red River and West Fargo after a big win for each of those teams. And an all-East, so we're guaranteed at least one East team in the championship with that win by the Riders yesterday and West Fargo's win over Bismarck. So that's the update there, as we can take a look at the bracket. I'm not sure if we have it. We do have it. There it is. Cheyenne and Century will be our first game coming up here at 1 o'clock. All the games today are on WDAY. Cheyenne and Century coming up at 1. That'll be followed by Red River and West Fargo at 3 o'clock, with the championship at 6 tomorrow night on WDAY. That Cheyenne Century game should be really intriguing. You've got, obviously, the best player in the state in Logan Nisley, who's gotten it out here on a bum ankle. She got dinged up yesterday. Bergen Kinnebrew got dinged up yesterday. They both finished with 20 points for the Patriots in their win as they rallied to beat Davies in that game, which was just a barn burner of a game that went right down to the wire, but they were able to pick that one up. And Cheyenne, they built a big lead on Bismarck Legacy, then had to hold on as Legacy made a rally. They could never get it within single digits, could the Sabres. And Brenna Dick, Peyton Breidenbach, Maya Metcalf, Carson Sanders, all of them in double figures yesterday in the Mustang win to get them into today's semifinals. Meanwhile, over at the Dome, we had a couple of blowouts. Davies took care of Jamestown. Century stayed unbeaten as they destroyed Shanley. North had to eke one out in their win as they got by Bismarck Legacy. But the game of the night happened in the second game. Again, Red River facing Minot. Minot, of course, the reigning state champions on the boys' side. We'll pick this up late in the game. Minot is going to the foul line here with a chance to at least give a little bit of breathing room, potentially ice the game against Red River. And the craziness would ensue from there. You look at the score, it's 80-79. It's a 1-1 situation. The free throw is missed. Red River gets the ball and calls timeout. And now the setup. The inbound goes to Zachary Kraft. And Kraft goes right around the defense and scores at the buzzer to win the game for Red River, 81-80 over Minot. An absolute thriller at the horn to give the 3 seed out of the East a date in tonight's semifinals and a matchup with Davies. You see the celebration. That was just fantastic yesterday at the Dome. You have a buzzer-beating shot in the state tournament. And, you know, we'll see the replay of this. I'm still not sure how or what Minot was doing on this play, because they just let Kraft go right to the basket and really nobody stopped him. And Red River moves on. Kirby Crefting said after the game, the entire time coming into state from Sunday to Wednesday, all you think is about your seniors and how you got here and how long they've been with the program. You want everything to be special for them. You want everything to be right. Well, it was pretty good last night, again, on this play to win it for the Riders and send them into the semifinals later tonight. So that's going to be our first game tonight on WDAY on the boys' side of things with Red River and Davies. They'll play at 6:30. And then our second game will have top seed out of the West, Bismarck Century against Fargo North. The Spartans have been here each of the last couple years, have not been able to get over the hump in the quarterfinal round. Had a couple of great games. Remember last year, they pushed Minot and lost in overtime in the quarterfinals. Last night they got challenged by Legacy, but they got by the Sabres and are now into tonight's semifinals. So that's the evening lineup, and you'll see those games tonight on WDAY. Davies, Red River to start at 6:30, and that will be followed by Century and North at 8:30 on what's going to be a great day of basketball here at the Shack. It's nice outside, at least before the blizzard is coming back for us again. So hopefully we have a great crowd here both this afternoon and tonight as we put near a cap here on the Class A basketball season. Busy show coming up for you here today on this Friday. It's become tradition at the state tournament to visit with our first guest today at 9:35. University of Mary women's basketball head coach Rick Neumann will join us. He's an interested bystander this weekend. Two of his future studs are playing today in the semifinals. Chloe Fowl for West Fargo, Bergen Kinnebrew for Bismarck Century. We'll visit with Rick coming up at 9:35. Zach Dosch will join us at 10 o'clock. Of course, he's calling the boys' games with Cullen Holt tonight. We'll recap that thriller that he saw with Red River and Minot. I know he's an interested Summit League mind as well. 2 years ago on this show, Zach picked Oral Roberts to make the Sweet 16. And then Oral Roberts went and made the Sweet 16. I will see if we can get him to be so bullish on the Golden Eagles again today. Of course, ORU beating the Bison on Tuesday night in Sioux Falls to clinch a berth in the NCAA tournament. We'll find out where the Golden Eagles are going on Sunday. And at 10:35, Justin Fletschock will join us, Assistant Director of the North Dakota High School Activity Association. Basketball is his baby. And we'll be asking him a bunch of questions, obviously, about where basketball is going in the state, with 3 classes set to become a reality next winter. What this means is a challenge for the association, what they think are the biggest hurdles and the biggest pitfalls potentially that could be arising over the next little bit. There are still some major decisions that are going to have to be made in the next month. Locations on where these state tournaments are going to be held. We have an idea, but nothing is confirmed yet. When Matt Fetch joined us last month to discuss this, he alluded to that nothing is signed, sealed, and delivered yet. So Fletch will join us coming up at 10:35 to discuss that. That and a heck of a lot more on our show this morning. We come back, another thriller yesterday, what the Moorhead Spuds went through at the state hockey tournament against the Cake Eaters from Edina. You'll shake your head if you missed the highlights of this one. We'll show you what happened down at the X yesterday in St. Paul. Hot Mike is off and rolling here at the Shack on this Friday morning. We're glad you're joining us. We're back after this on WDAY Extra and InForum.com. Welcome back, everybody, to Hot Mike here, live on location at the Shack on this Friday morning, getting ready for Final Four Friday. Our coverage beginning at 1 o'clock here on WDAY and 6:30 for the boys session coming up later tonight. Exciting day, lots going on. Of course, college basketball in full swing with the big boy tournaments going on all over the place, from the Big East, the ACC, Big Ten, SEC, even our friends in the Pac-12 still playing, as we'll figure out all the automatic bids in the field of 68 will be set on Sunday evening. The women's selection show follows that, and we'll find out about South Dakota State, where the Jackrabbits are be seeded and going. And then following that, the women's NIT field will be revealed. Now, what I've been told is that the field will come out, but the bracket won't come out till Monday. I don't know how that works, but that's what I'm told on it. And I had a couple people ask me about this because the NCAA, and we mentioned this during late last month and earlier this month, has nothing to do with the women's NIT. The NCAA is completely affiliated with the men's NIT, but the women's NIT, they have no affiliation, so it's completely independently run. North Dakota State has put in a bid to host a game, which was $6,500 bid minimum to host. I don't know if they're going to get it. I can tell you Wisconsin Green Bay also made the field. That's a team the Bison played earlier this season. Just from a regionality standpoint, and we've done this 1,000 times with the FCS playoffs, I look at that team and say, okay, that's a potential game that NDSU could play, because you can drive there if the Bison end up going to Green Bay, or they can come up here. So keep an eye on that. And the Phoenix were really good this year, by the way. They won 27 basketball games. They were really, really talented, and they beat the Bison, as I mentioned earlier this season. So that's how that process works out there. Okay, we mentioned all the basketball at the top of the show. We got to show you the hockey game yesterday. It was happening in the middle of the day. The Spuds and Edina playing in the second of the 4 two-way quarterfinals at XL Energy Center. One of the crazier games in the history of the state hockey tournament. That's saying something, because they've had some wild ones down there. In a game where the Spuds came out and they scored the first goal of this game. As we'll show you here, they're wearing their great orange jerseys. Parker Gass got everything started. 5:24 into the first period. The puck comes loose. He comes in, scores on the breakaway. It's a 1-0 Moorhead lead. Edina, though, was toying with the Spuds for a majority of this game. They have such high-end talent. Bobby Cowan was fantastic in this game as you look at the gassed replay to make it a 1-zip Moorhead lead. After that, though, it's 5-2. We'll pick it up in the third period. Cowan already has a hat trick. Aaron Ryerson comes in and scores at a perfect wrist shot. Now it's 5-3 in favor of Edina as the Spuds get one back. This was a perfect tic-toe pass. Mason Kraft right on the tape, of Ryerson. But Edina answers right back. Literally, this was a minute later. That's the hat trick goal from Bobby Cowan. So now it is 6-3 Edina. You're thinking, okay, the game's over. Under 8 minutes to go. Here comes Abe Carlson. What a wrist shot that was. That's unsavable. Now it's 6-4. And there's still a ton of time left in the game. Another tic-tac-toe pass. That is a fabulous shot. So it's a 6-4 game. And there's about 7 minutes to go. Spuds get a power play. Now we're in the dying seconds here. 3 minutes to go. Caleb Anderson scores. Now it's 6-5, and the Spuds are starting to believe at this point. Even there's fans cheering against Edina. They were on the Spud bandwagon at this point. That's a perfect deflection in front from Anderson to make it a 6-5 game. You see right there off the end of the blade to make this a 6-5 game. Now, under almost a minute to go, Colby Creer comes out in front. They whack at it through the sticks. He scores and ties the game at 6 with under a minute to go. The X going crazy. You look at the Spud bench. They were ready to jump out of their skates as they got that goal with the extra man on the ice. So it's a 6-6 game and forces overtime out of the net mouth scramble here. They had a couple of chances to get the puck out. They couldn't. And Creer ties the game there for the Spuds at 6-all. It goes to overtime. It goes to double overtime. Charlie Sandvin with the blast from the point through a screen and wins it for Edina in double overtime. Coach was even stunned that the puck went in the net, and the Hornets beat the Spuds in a thriller. 7-6 in double overtime. Again, it's through a screen. This was pretty much impossible to see, and I'm not sure how Kai Weigel could even have a chance to stop that one. And Edina beats the Spuds. Great year for Moorhead. They'll play in the consolation round this afternoon. John Ammerman said after the game, we are in the entertainment business. I'm pretty sure we gave the people their money's worth here this afternoon. That is right and then some about that game yesterday at the X. That is a crushing way to lose, but a fun hockey game that Edina will play on later today. The AA semifinals are coming up tonight at the X. The A semifinals today. Warroad still trying to keep an unbeaten season going. They play later today at the XL Energy Center. One quick thing here before we wrap up this segment. Since it's so terrible outside, we got to show, anytime we can show you golf or baseball in March, we will do that on the show. So Tom Hoge's back playing this week at the Players' Championship, the unofficial 5th major of the PGA season at TPC Sawgrass, where, of course, they have the Island Hole. And of all things, yesterday, Hoge birdied the Island Hole there at 17. That was pretty much the only highlight for Tom yesterday. It was a, shall we say, up and down, best way to describe his day yesterday. This pitch shot at the 11th was not bad, set him up for a birdie there. But he littered the course with both birdies, bogeys, and double bogeys yesterday. This approach shot pretty good that set up a birdie, but he finished with an opening round of 78. He was tied for 106, 6 over par. He's already on the golf course today. He eagled the second hole and birdied the 9th. So he's 3 under already through 10 holes. He's going to have to shoot probably 66. He's got to get 3 more shots on the back 9 to see if he wants to play the weekend, because right now the projected cut is +1. Hoge's at +3. So if he can get a couple more shots back here, he's got a chance to play the weekend, which this would be, I would imagine, utterly frustrating for him, considering he led this tournament last year through 2 rounds. Remember, last year was plagued by rain, and they had some terrible weather and fog down there, but that's a tough day. Included, by the way, we saw a hole-in-one on the Island Green, which I think is only the 17th or 18th ever hole-in-one there. So some work to do for Hoge on the back 9 today to see if he wants to stick around for the weekend. This is a huge FedEx Cup points event, so that's what it's all about for him now, is making sure he's got enough points to make sure he's in the Tour Championship and consider for him for the Ryder Cup. That's all we're talking about this year leading up to the fall, is can he earn a spot on the U.S. Ryder Cup team. So he needs to stack some good finishes here, which he did at the start of the season. We'll take a break, bottom of the hour here. We come back, one of our favorite guests, Rick Neumann, will join us, head coach of the University of Mary women's basketball team, and interested observer this weekend with a couple of his future players standing out here at the State A basketball tournament. We'll take a break. Hot Mic continues live from location here from the Shack. We're back after this on WDAY Extra and InForum.com. Welcome back, everybody, to Hot Mic here at the Shack on this Friday morning. WDAY Extra, InForum.com. In my email, it is official. The Minnesota Vikings have released Adam Thielen. This is a statement from Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah saying Adam will forever be a part of the Minnesota Vikings family and history, setting the standard with his play on the field, being a selfless teammate, and making a permanent impact on the community. Adam's influence is significant. We are grateful for everything he brought to the Vikings organization since arriving in 2013, and I'm thankful to have the opportunity to work with him over the last year. He's the best representation of what the Minnesota Vikings should stand for. I wish nothing but the best for Adam, Caitlin, and their entire family. So there it is, officially now from the Vikings. Again, as we mentioned off the top of the show, it's not a stunning move there. It is probably surprising maybe for fans that don't follow it that closely, but with the Vikings salary cap situation as it was, there's going to be some hard decisions made, and that is one of them. And we'll have much more on that in our news coming up tonight at 6. It's great to see this become a running guest here at the state basketball tournament. It's Rick Neumann, University of Mary women's basketball head coach. I'm expecting the donuts. You brought the donuts last year, man. I didn't have breakfast yet this morning.
Well, I'll be honest. I'm not a very good connoisseur of the Fargo-Moorhead metropolitan area donut scene, but I did put in a couple of requests last night, and I didn't get some answers. So I do feel like I disappointed you.
Dude, it's great to see you again. I know you wish you probably were still playing basketball. You had another win in the Northern Sun tournament, made it back down. You were in Sioux Falls for 2 games, which we can get into in a second, but evaluate how the season went for your team.
You know, I thought it was a good season. You know, remember last year you and I talked about how it took us to the last day to sneak into the tournament, and then we went down and had such a great time down there and built into a great offseason, and we did all of that. And so it was a good season, and it was like really close to being great. You know, and again, I think the biggest thing is you look at, you know, we didn't have our best player all year. And, you know, Lexi Schneider was arguably a top 3-4 kid in the entire Northern Sun, and 13 seconds into our first preseason scrimmage, she ended up cracking a small bone in her lower leg. And just by the time she came back, we were playing pretty good and everything. And she was kind of like, what do I do? And I just said, we're going to do whatever you want to do. And so she decided to redshirt, and so that makes our next year's team better. Yep. And it allowed our post players to develop this year and gives us a lot. But I tried to convince our girls, like, last year we snuck in. We were the 6th seed. We won on the road. Yep. We got to the quarterfinals. Great year. I'm like, girls, we got 3rd this year. Like, we got back to where we want to be as a program. We tied for 3rd in the North, and we're 5th overall in the Northern Sun. And I mean, we've got 3 teams playing in the NCAA tournament today. Yeah. I was on the rankings committee this year, Dom, and through it all, we had there's 42 or 44 teams in our region that make up the opportunity for the NCAA tournament. And when I looked at all the numbers and I put everything together, we played the 8th hardest schedule in our region, and we finished 14th, and that was with the junky last 2 weeks. I mean, I think sometimes what we forget, Dom, is, when you're an outsider and you come, like even me, like I come to this state tournament and I watch games and I want to, I don't know, not criticize, but you look at players and you're like, oh, man.
You're looking at it with a critical eye.
Yeah. But you just don't know what's going on in their life. Yep. And the same thing happens for college scholar athletes. Yep. I mean, you don't want to. 2 years ago, Dom, I made a decision on social media that I was going to stop being the coach that tried to, like, brag, if you will, or boast when you won, or rationalize why you lost. And so all I do now, as you know, is I just tweet out the locker room scene. Yeah. When we win, we sing the fight song and we go on, because there's a lot that goes into it. And what I noticed is, like, sometimes life gets in the way. And for our scholar athletes, I mean, it's not their fault, but our 3 seniors in the last couple of weeks of the year, well, we had one that was a student teacher, and that's really hard.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And you saw that, just exhausted coming. You're teaching 6th grade snotty boys all day, right? Like, you're trying to teach them math of all things, and you got to come and practice and wait, right? And then we had a nursing student, Megan Voigt, who's, finished 2 threes shy of being our all-time leading three-point shooter at Mary. Well, she's a nurse. And the last semester of nursing clinicals was crazy. She was like 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. Didn't practice, rolling in. That's tough. And then our senior from point guard from right here in Fargo Davies, Carly Kotzik, basically blew out her ankle and missed the last few. So we had 3 one-possession losses in our last 4 games. So, I mean, you're sitting here like 12-6, life's great, here we go. Yeah. And then you have it kind of just falls apart. And then the weather, as we're going to get to. But I think so, like I said, good season. Really close to great, and now it's my job to, again, convince these young ladies on our program that, you guys, that was a really good season, and we've got a lot of optimism and a lot of excitement to come back and be better next year, so that next year this is a remote call because we're getting ready at the NCAA tournament.
So let me ask you about the rankings here. Watching Duluth play, who can beat them? They're that good. I mean, they can make a run to the Elite Eight, right? I mean, they're the kind of team that Mandy has this year.
Yes, they are really good. We missed 4 free throws with 14 seconds in December to beat them. 4. Yeah. And then they still had to come down and hit a 3 at the buzzer and then beat us in overtime. Like that one, right? That one's never going to go away.
You're never going to lose that.
That one's trouble. But, they're really good. They've got Brooke Olson's a national player of the year. Yeah. I was so disappointed she didn't portal to the Summit last year. But she's unbelievable. And playing at a national tournament, like MVP, All-American level. And then there are other guards. And, I mean, they've just been a group that's been together and really took advantage of the NCAA COVID ruling and stuck around for that extra year and played in the title game 4 straight years. But it was interesting because they were always kind of sitting at number 2 in those polls, and Nebraska Kearney was clearly number 1, just kind of based on strength of schedule, right? But pretty even. And when Kearney lost in the semifinals of their MIAA tournament and Duluth was able to win our Northern Sun tournament, that flipped them in the very last poll. And so that's just how close those margins are. And so now, rather than heading down there, they're hosting up
that's
there.
And
I do think, for Augustana and Mankato, my biggest thing fighting on that committee was to just try to have the brackets so we weren't
playing one
Northern
another.
Sun, Northern Sun, and I think that worked out great, where hopefully all 3 of those teams can have a chance to win and do some damage and just add some more credibility to what we always think. Here's what we always say, like, we think like the MIAA in Division II is comparable to the SEC, you know, a little bit more southernly, access to a lot of things, great resources, college town, great facility. Northern Sun's kind of like the Big Ten, you know, upper Midwest, but it's arguably the two best Division II leagues in the country, and we got to play in the same region. You know, that's the only downfall about D2 is it's a regionalization.
Yes, I don't like that either.
If this were a 64-team NCAA field, UMary's probably dancing, but that's where we're at, and we understand that. But to be that close again, you know, because you know when you're in the top 3, 4, 5 of our league, you're knocking on the door.
Right, you're right there.
And that's where we're at. But, you know, it was, like I said, just that close, and we'll be better for it next year.
So we talked about it on the show of the circumstances surrounding your postseason, your first postseason game. You were supposed to host Wayne State in Bismarck. You earned that, and that was one of the many winter storms we get walloped both down in Nebraska and all the way up to Bismarck. Tell us, at least from what you can say, about what happened there and the circumstance of losing the home game and then having to go to Sioux Falls and play the game down there.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a really emotional week for our girls because, like I said, we kind of, you know, limped into the finish line with those tough losses. And, you know, 2 weeks to go in the regular season, we were playing at St. Cloud on a Saturday for second place and a bye.
Right.
You know, and then lost that one by 4 points. And then we could clinch third, clinch it all, and lost by, you know, we're up by 1 with 13 seconds at home against Northern. Gave up an offensive rebound, fouled a young lady. She made 2 free throws. Go on the road at Moorhead, down 20-some at half, come all the way back, have 7 ties in the fourth quarter, have a chance to tie that thing, have a chance to go ahead, lose that one, and you're just like, oh, man, what's going on? So you kind of stumble into the postseason, but then you just try to build that excitement because, I mean, everyone is going to say, like, oh, home playoff games. But you, Mary, I've been a part of a bunch of them, and, like, there's not a seat in the gym, you know, and it's the band, and I mean, it's awesome. It's
vibe,
just great.
Right,
we had an alumni social plan, so everyone's getting that information. And then, you know, you see the weather, right? And so then we got back from Moorhead. I'm at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. I'm at my daughter's 5th grade travel basketball game, and the AD calls, and he's like, you know, we got a call about weather because Northern Sun had wrestling going on in Aberdeen, indoor track and field championships in Mankato, and then the tournament. And that's all in the eye of the storm, right? So everyone's making plans. And the frustrating part was, you know, for Wayne, they don't have a bus company that takes them from Wayne that's based in Wayne like a lot of the larger schools in the league. So they have to have a bus come and get them. So that's frustrating. And then obviously they're in a state school. And, you know, our girls kept saying, well, Coach, last year we hopped in 3 Suburbans and drove down.
I remember that.
And I was like, yeah, well, God bless the private school because we just find a way to get it done, right? But it's a little different when you're at a state school, okay? A few more red tape options to go through, right? But anyway, so as that storm kept developing, I mean, you know, you saw a lot of teams made arrangements and tried to travel and get there early, and Wayne just couldn't get it worked out with their bus company. And so it went from we're going Wednesday night to, okay, maybe we'll get Thursday night. Oh, well, now a best option, only option is to drive to Sioux Falls. So we got to go down and, again, set some history because according to our radio guy, we're like only the second team in Northern Sun history that's won consecutive road playoff games. So it ended up as a great example of our girls to fight through adversity, and I felt really happy that they were able to win down there in what was the home game for us.
Was it more anger or frustration for you through that?
You know, there was some anger early, but, you know, then we tried to channel it to frustration. And, heck, our mantra for that game Friday night was just that, play angry. Like, take your frustrations out with how hard you can play. And just it was a great win for our program and got us back into that Pentagon to experience it. Only downfall being, you know, it felt like a real road weekend because we just played 2 games Friday, Saturday. Right? You're playing Mankato, who's full court kamikaze press. Like, so, but we lined up and played so well that night, too. And I think, actually, you know this, right? Everyone loves an underdog sympathy. We gained a lot of followers because they were like, oh, man, feel so bad for you guys. Go get them. And so it ended up being a nice finish. And our seniors that had such a tough last couple of weeks with just life things, they played so well. And that is always what you want to see, too.
Let's take a break. We come back. I want to talk to you about your future recruits that are out here playing that we saw last night with Chloe Fau and Bergen Kinnerbrew are going to be playing for the Marauders next season. Rick Neumann joining us here on set at the Shack. We'll wrap up hour 1 of Hot Mic on this Friday. Back after this on WDAY Extra and InForum.com. Wrapping up hour one here of Hot Mike. Boy, Hoagie's trying to do his best to make the weekend here. We told you he had to probably go 6 under. He's 4 under now as he just birdied the 11th hole at the Players' Championship in lovely Florida, trying to make the weekend for one of the most prestigious events on the PGA Tour. Wrapping up hour one back here with Rick Neumann, University of Mary women's basketball head coach. An interesting observer here this weekend. We're watching 2 of your future players, Chloe Fowl for West Fargo, Bergen Kinnebrew for Bismarck Century play. Both of them just tremendous players. Describe each of their performances yesterday. How do you think they're going to translate to the college game?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. The rooting interests are so hard these days because when you've been doing this as long as I have and you started as a high school coach in the West region, I can call all of those West region guys my friends, and now the EDC does such a great job. They come over every year for a one-day team camp, so you get to know those guys. So you just kind of sit on your hands a little bit, because Kenyon Wingenbach's one of my best friends in life, and he's out here now. But you want to, Nate Wellstead, I coached with him at UMary. I mean, there's just so many connections. It's just really fun. Really fun to have that in my life. But, Bergen is just really, really talented. And so, there's part of me that would like to see Bergen and Chloe go for, the title game tomorrow. But it should be a fun afternoon. But, Bergen's someone that just has kept getting better and better and better. Yeah. And to be honest with you, Dom, that's one of those recruitments, they're all different. That thing took 22 hours. I mean, obviously we talked to her and things, but real quiet kid. And then during the year, you'd talk to Nate and you'd be like, well, does Bergen even want to come and play? What does she want to do? Because I'll text her good luck, and it'd be like 4 games later, and she's like, oh, yeah, thanks. And you're just like, some kids are really engaged and some are quiet.
Not,
she
right?
was not, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, she had just an unbelievable summer. Yeah. And, there were a couple other coaches from, the Summit League in this building yesterday that had visits scheduled in July and everything. And, the recruiting period wrapped up last summer, and she called me and said, hey, can I come and check out UMary? And I was like, wow, okay, let's do it. Didn't know. I just thought you were moving on. Yeah. So she showed up. We had a great day, and it was like the next morning. And Megan Zander actually called me because she was with Bergen's dad, Mark, training at IPT in Bismarck. And she's like, yeah, Mark said Bergen really loved the visit and sounds like she's going to be a Marauder before the day's over. I'm like, all right, that's news to me. So then Bergen called and she said, yeah, I'm going to cancel all my visits. And I just think I want to stay home and be around my family and come play for you guys. So I was like, all right, great. And, and I just think when you watch Bergen, her shot creation is what separates her from a lot of kids. She's lanky, can slither in there. She can make the standstill 3. I mean, she's really talented offensively, and so that excites us. And then with Chloe,
I was interested to ask you about this because now you could actually talk about it because I know with NCAA regulations you can't. When the knee injury happened, how concerned were you about that? Did that sour you at all? Say, okay, we got to see her come back before we're ready to fully jump in with 2 feet.
No, I think in all honesty, I was like really sad for her and Coach Benson, but inside I was kind of like, oh yeah, this probably help us.
Help us?
Yeah, if she goes out and has a great summer, then maybe we're losing her to the Summit League or something, right? So I mean, it's really kind of a double-edged sword there. Sorry, Chloe, I love you, but wait, no. So I mean, for us, it just is such a part of women's basketball where you just. It's almost like if you go a year where that doesn't happen to one of your own players, you're like, oh, okay.
You're living well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I always joke with Chloe Lamb about that now that she's this, former stud player who's now into coaching. I remember when I was working for Fred, somebody would go down, and when you're the assistant, you're always like, yeah, next man up. We'll be ready. Let's go. As soon as you become a head coach, like you just every day at practice, you're just like, please don't let anyone get hurt. Don't get anyone hurt. And when practice, assistants are coming up. We need to do some take the charge drills. We need to get some rebounding. I'm just like, can we just get out of here without someone getting hurt? So that's the funny part about when you change that mindset.
Wrap them up in bubble wrap, right?
When you slide over a seat.
That's
but
funny.
Chloe, we worked really hard to build a relationship with Chloe and her family. And again, I just think Bergen and Chloe, those are the types of kids that, like when we got Cassie Asvig and Gabby Bowl, like if you're going to win our league or get where you need to be, you need to sneak some of those kids in that certainly can play and even get offers at that higher level. You just do. I mean, really good, talented players and consistency in assistant coaching is what gets it done. And then ultimately, administrations win championships. You see how I left the head coach out of that entire equation, right? But it's exciting to see those two and for Chloe to come back and play so well. I mean, and geez, like last night, I mean, Bismarck High, Bill Shetler, his son and my son are best buddies. They play travel basketball together. I've known Bill forever since, Bill's wife, Natalie, played for us at UMary. My daughter's going to go play for him at Bismarck High next year. So there's such a connection. But when you watch that game last night, I mean, it looked like a college team. West Fargo's huge.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
Chloe
standing there. I mean, she looked like she was a, 6'2" power forward. I mean, but
Mariley dwarfs everybody out there.
Was just like 3 kids hanging on her as she's going up. I mean, it was it's an exciting time because I really like our class, and we talked last year, and now we talk. But the 23 class in North Dakota, I mean, if you want to watch North Dakota kids, I mean, Minot grabbed some really good kids that are playing in here. Moorhead with Maya Metcalf. Northern got DeConte Smith and, Mikkel Heidelbaugh from rugby. I mean, they were like, everyone's like, wow, well, you can only have so many in your recruiting class. And like Lamb told me yesterday when I was kind of saying the same thing to her, she's like, well, we got couple pretty good North Dakota kids
you guys
too.
Are pretty good.
And
one that slouch there.
Yeah, one that nobody got to see was, Allison Undland, whose parents are were great college basketball players because she unfortunately tore her ACL again this year and didn't get to play. But there's a 6'3" post kid that's really athletic from Mohall. So I mean, in our 5-player class, we signed 3 really good North Dakota kids.
That's pretty impressive. I'm obligated to ask you: have you seen Ant-Man yet? Yeah,
we did go.
What'd you think?
I was kind of basing it off your tweet. I was ready for it. I like a little bit more of the human element of Marvel movies, so I was a little nervous about one like solely in the quantum realm. But it was good, right? Like
I enjoyed it. It wasn't as good as some of the other two. I like the other two, I think, more than this one.
I miss the guy when he I can't remember the actor's name, but I miss the guy when he gets all from the crew, the Steel.
Michael Pena, that's his name.
When he gets off the
Luis,
Luis. I missed that one, but the best part is we went as a family in a snowstorm on a Tuesday night, and we had some nachos and pop. And when your kids are laughing and they're excited about it, what more is there?
My wife had the same reaction because she's not a huge Marvel fan, but she's seen the Ant-Man movie. She's like, and I told her like it's not going to be like the other two. And I'm not trying to spoil it. I know people haven't seen it yet, but she had the same reaction you did. It's like she likes the human element more than what they did there. Jonathan Majors, though, is awesome. He was awesome in that. He's a perfect guy to cast as the villain going forward for how many other movies they're going to have him in.
I agree. We were on eBay and Amazon for 2 hours to try to lock in some characters to match up so that we have some more bad guys coming in our household. But yeah, I think he's going to be a great next realm guy.
What is next now? Is Guardians of the Galaxy is next, I believe, in May, right? I think that's the last one, so that's the next one up. So I'm excited about that.
I really like that one. Yep. I don't know, probably I'm glad it's still like PG-13, right? But like I always like Guardians of the Galaxy because there's also just enough adult humor in that, right? Where you can,
absolutely.
Those are good ones.
The other one that's coming is the Marvels movie, which I know my wife is really excited about that because she loved Captain Marvel with Brie Larson.
Yes.
So that I'm really intrigued about with the but it's almost, and we got to go. I don't know if it's fatigue for some people now. I love it. I know you and your family love it. There's so many out there, but we're at a point now, there's been so many. I think Marvel has actually realized, hey, let's space it out a little bit because there's been so much over the last few years. It's just too much. It's overflow, really.
We're going to keep going, and you and I both know the only one they should have tanked was Eternals. That thing's just got no place in anything, right?
It's too long, and it was pointless.
Yes.
So it's great to see you. I love that we do this every year. Thanks so much for coming by. Safe travels home whenever you decide to get out of here. Hopefully,
I probably got to go back to Target right now and grab some stuff in case we don't get home until Sunday. But we're going to be here watching and supporting our players and we always try to do what's right by North Dakota coaches. And boy, North Dakota colleges had good basketball. UND and NDSU rebounded. We had a good season. So I mean, it's exciting and to see the high level of play in North Dakota. What great games yesterday. But like I said, the relationships and the friendships I have with the coaches here, and you come out here and they all come and say hi to you and you visit with them, and that's what this is all about. And so we're happy. And again, thanks to you for all your coverage for us and for this area. But I mean, it's great to have everyone just says. In North Dakota, a guy can put a show on, streaming and TV and radio every morning and pound it out for a few hours. Like, you do a great job.
I appreciate it.
We love you very much out in Bismarck.
Thanks so much for coming by, man. Great to see you. Rick Neumann, head coach of the University of Mary women's basketball team. An annual tradition joining us here at the State A basketball tournament. We'll take a break. We come back. Zach Dosch will join us. We'll break down what we saw yesterday on the boys' side of things and another prediction. We'll see if we can get him on the record to do that. We'll start hour 2 of Hot Mic. We come back right after this.
This is Hot Mike. Hot Mike. On the networks of WDAY. WDAY. Here's Dom Izzo.
Welcome back, everybody. Hour 2 of Hot Mike, live on location here at the Shack on this Friday. Final Four Friday coming up here in about 3 hours' time as we'll tip off the girls' semifinals with Century and Cheyenne, followed by Red River and West Fargo. And the boys' semis will then take center stage at 6:30 with Davies in the first game against Red River. Always great to see Zach Dosch back on the show. How you doing, my man?
Doing great, man. Excited for a great day of basketball, man. I think it's going to be a really competitive night.
You were over at the Dome yesterday with Cullen Holt. We're going to show the end of the Red River Minot game again. What in the world happened? How did that play for Zach Kraft unfold for him to go right to the basket?
Well, it started with some missed free throws. That kind of opened the door.
Yeah.
You know, because we were kind of scheming through a couple different scenarios and didn't really take into account the fact that the first free throw could be missed.
Right.
And then, free throw, rebound, timeout. So it was taken out at about the half-court line. And then Minot really allowed him to escape the whole play going baseline. And because there was essentially 3 players on the ball handler, there wasn't much in the way of help defense, and the help defense that was there a little late.
Yeah.
I mean, there you see him kind of escape right past 3 defenders.
Wow.
Help side defender a little late, and the finger roll right over the outstretched arms of the defense, and for, a game winner. And, man, Red River played really well, and they just showed how dangerous they can be. They knocked down a bunch of threes in the first half. Minot made a lot of good adjustments. Minot was not poor defensively at all. I mean, Red River made a lot of contested shots, particularly in the second half, a lot of contested twos, and they really went out and won that game and just took it away from Minot.
So they'll get Davies in the first semi tonight, and then the second one will be Century against North. It might be academic because you've seen Century play. I think everybody on the outside say, well, okay, everybody's playing for second because Century is that good. Is that accurate, or are we going to have some good stuff here tonight?
I think we're going to have a great game tonight because I think North, in particular, with their personnel, can push Century in ways that they haven't been pushed this year. They've been pushed. It's not like Century hasn't been challenged. They've been challenged. Minot challenged them a couple times. Yeah. But Minot challenged them in a much different way than I think North will. I mean, those Sem brothers are the real deal. Yeah. And it's not like an X's and O's thing with them. It's just you can't.
Athleticism and goal, right?
Exactly. And so you're going to have to defend them with the team, which obviously Century does a really nice job. But they haven't really faced a team with those type of players. I think Carter Zeller, Ryan Erickson, I think that's going to be a good battle. So I think Century's going to get pushed in a way that they haven't been pushed before. That doesn't mean that they can't overcome it, but this is a unique challenge for Century tonight.
The interesting aspect of this as well in the first game with Davies, as they're playing Red River, is Mason Clabo's status, and we really don't have an answer on it. I was told that he had surgery and is done. He's not played since the end of February. He didn't play in the EDC tournament. He didn't play yesterday. That's kind of the specter out here we really don't know here, Zach.
Yeah, I'm operating under the assumption that he's not going to play.
Right.
I mean, and the reasons we're not doctors, we're not going to prognosticate about that. And so just if he's not there, he's not there. And so obviously Red River played Davies twice in the regular season. Davies beat him by once at their place and then by a larger margin at Davis, but obviously both of those games were with Mason. So this is totally different. And coming off a game that they had, against Minot yesterday, I think Red River has all the confidence in the world that they can change the outcome of those games. And so I'm really curious to see how that plays out. They have the guards to be able to beat that Davies pressure. And it's just a question of whether they do that. I think it's going to be an exciting game. There's going to be a lot of back and forth, and probably not a ton of X's and O's in that game, but there's going to be a lot of playmaking. And so it's going to be a really great entertainment value for those watching at home.
Already selling in there for you, folks, for 6:30 tonight for that first game, and it should be both games. Back to Century, because I was at UND's post-game press conference after they lost to Oral Roberts, and Paul Sather brought up Ryan Erickson by name because he can now because he's signed. What have you seen for him? Because he said he's taken the next step here over the last half of the season, become really, really good. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the thing I like about Ryan Erickson is so many people like to look at the stats, right? But when you just watch him play, he's a very unselfish player, very well-rounded. He has the skill development, and so it's just about, getting that athleticism up to the level of a Division I player, and that's usually probably the most straightforward thing that a coach can address with a player. I mean, they can control that. I mean, there's plenty of weights to lift up in Grand Forks, that type of thing. And so, no question they're going to push him, but I think they really have to be excited about what he brings to the table. The ability to pick and pop is huge in college basketball, as to be able to spread the floor. That's incredibly valuable. And so I'm really excited to see what he does up there. And no question, he's going to face a a long learning curve because the thing about in high school, he just doesn't have a whole lot of players that can look him in the eye.
Right.
You know, and the summer league is full of players that can look him in the eye. You know, he's going to get pushed even in practice in ways that he hasn't been. So I'm excited to see how he responds and what type of player he becomes.
Okay, so 2 years ago we're doing this in Minot. You came on my show and said Oral Roberts is going to make the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Oral Roberts went and made the Sweet 16. So here we are 2 years later. Are you going to go on the record again and say Oral Roberts can make the Sweet 16?
I will. It's the same players. It's the same. It's almost the same team.
And they had a 7'5" guy added in.
It's literally the same guys. You know, so I'll be curious to see their draw.
Yes.
You know, it's
that's everything hinges on that.
Right. Yeah. The draw is everything. And then once I saw Ohio State pop up in Florida, it's like, oh boy, that does not scare me at all. You know, I mean, those meddling Power 5 schools, I think are in for some trouble against Oral Roberts. I mean, it's been just a pleasure to watch this team come together. And, you know, it's on one hand, it's fun to call their games because they're so good. On the other hand, when you're trying to illustrate ways that teams can beat them, you're kind of reaching a little bit. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, well, if A, B, C, and D happen.
And that's exactly
then
for the Bison on Tuesday night. They needed a perfect game from themselves, and they needed 1, 2, and 3 to happen, and that didn't happen Tuesday night.
And the thing about Oral Roberts is they're so good down the stretch. They have, you know, very much like South Dakota State last year, they have winning down to a science. They get that lead, then they get the ball in Max Asmus's hands, and he makes decisions or knocks down free throws. Simple as that, rinse and repeat. Exact same thing what South Dakota State did this year. But, man, it just goes to show you what you can accomplish if you have some continuity.
Yeah.
And so the players in the conference, I know that's sort of on everybody's mind at this time of year. You know, if you want to be a successful college basketball player and you want to make a lot of money as a professional and you want to go play in the NBA, we need to see Oral Roberts have success. This is the blueprint, and there's no reason that every player in the conference can't replicate this if they stick to it because there's such a great opportunity because so many players aren't.
It's interesting, though. Paul Mills could see when they lost Kevin O'Banner, he went out and he needed a rim protector because O'Banner was that. They went and got that with Vanover. And that's the era of where we're living in, though, to go back. You can literally go shop now for what you need for your teams. And that's, like it or not, that's the era we're in right now. And that's how Oral Roberts really can do this for a while. They can recruit guys, but they can also they can go and find whoever they want and plug and play, I think.
Yeah, you know, so much is made about players leaving in the portal and players being able to transfer. But the coaches are becoming they're taking the offensive approach. You know,
you have to, right?
Yeah, you can't just play defense and beg players to stay. It's just like okay, well, you know, if you're going to transfer, whatever, I got to have two players behind you. Yeah. And so they're doing that. They're getting that approach, and you know, it's. I'm very curious to see how many, like, are there Power 5 bounce backs into the conference? Yeah. Not many. Vanover's one. Yep. That's about it.
Yep.
And so where do these transfers come from? We saw a couple Division II players move up, you know, so roster configuration is on everybody's mind, and it's really on a year-to-year basis. You know, redshirting players, it's kind of pointless anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I'm really curious to see, but I think coaches are getting much more aggressive with that portal and not assuming that players are going to come back, and whatever happens, they're a little bit more prepared for it than they have been in the first 2 years.
Which is interesting because here, that's not what Dave Richmond has embraced. He's still embracing the high, and much like Paul Sather, we're going to go the high school route. We're going to recruit those guys. If we need to add a player, we will find somebody who fits our model. We're not just going to go and get a guy. That's the antithesis of what's happening right now.
But it's an interesting strategy because, like I'm talking, players,
it paid off for the Bison this year. I'll say that. The freshmen worked.
Well, not only are they able to reach the conference championship game, but the table is set.
Yep.
The table is set for another 2-3 years. And you know, I think teams like UND and NDSU and the Summit League teams, they have access to some players that probably wouldn't have made it into this conference before. You know, that bigger schools would have tried to pick those players up and redshirt them and develop them a little bit. And now, instead of doing that, instead of investing the time in the younger players, they say, well, why don't we let somebody else do that? Yeah. And then let's pick them off when they're juniors, and then it's a lot easier for us. Less of a headache. We have less development, things like that. And so it's a great opportunity for the Summit League players to also get some freshmen that they didn't have access to. And so the question is okay, do they spend 1 year? Do they spend 3 years? You know, anyway, it's constantly evolving. It's constantly a game of cat and mouse. You know, I'm all for players being able to, you know, live out their dreams and having the best experience. But the problem is a lot of these kids don't have great they don't always have the best people around them telling accurate information.
They're not getting great advice, man.
Exactly.
Just saying.
You know, coaches definitely have much more information than the players do. However, it's also tampering season.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I think, you know, I think what you're starting to see is kids making sure that they understand where they're going before they hit the portal, which is sad, and it's a big problem, and it's a situation that's been created, and there's no real way to regulate that. but it's the world that we live in, and we're all kind of in it together. And so it's when you see it affecting NDSU and South Dakota State and things like that, nobody's really immune to it. It's just a question of, okay, these coaches have to play a little bit more offense.
You look at, and now the numbers, Zach, are starting to come out, like the hard numbers of how many guys found places to go and how many didn't find anywhere to go. I don't know if that information hopefully is getting to the students now, the athletes, about this, to say, look, the grass isn't greener. If you're going to go, you're taking an awful risk that, like you said, you better have your place lined up, because if not, you may not find a spot, period.
I thought kids were going to start recognizing that and looking at that after the first year, maybe the second year, but it's actually getting worse. It's actually getting worse.
Yeah, the numbers are going up.
Yeah, the problem is you're talking to kids who have already beat the odds, right? You know, it's 2 to 4% of high school players play in college, and let alone Division I, and so the odds don't apply to them. That's what they think.
Right.
But the problem is they're amongst everybody who's already beat the odds, and so you know, it's a tough situation. You know, it's pretty easy to point out a large number of lateral at best moves that do not work out, not only on the court, but we're talking about graduating too, you know, and so, like, what's the point of all this? And so I don't know, you know, there's a tremendous opportunity for self-aware kids who choose to stay and compete. I'll just leave it at that. And the Oral Roberts, it's nothing magical. The kids just stick together. They stick together. And it's not just Max Aismans. It's Kareem Thompson. It's all those guys. It's Carlos Jurgens. You know, that's part of the reasons why they're so good. And they had, you know, the best career possible. They're going to make professional money. They're going to get their degrees, all that stuff. Why not do that in the Summit League? That's the picture that we need to paint, and that's why Oral Roberts is so important in this NCAA tournament.
It's funny, just talking with Rick Neumann about how he's worried about losing players up to the Summit. The Summit is always worried about losing players. I mean, that's where we're at.
It's the
where
food chain.
It really is. And I don't see this stopping anytime soon. Where I was in Sioux Falls, Zach, for 4 days, and all you could think of, and people talking about, like, it feels like we're in minor league basketball. We feel like we're feeding up to the Power Five, and it's hard to dispute that theory.
You could fight it and lose, or you could figure out how to do it the best and win. That's the reality of the situation. You saw Alec Rosner transfer from Winona and basically play 40 minutes a game for Western Illinois. You know what I mean? And that's life. Again, you can either complain about it, get mad about it, or you could figure out how to do it the best. You know, you got to play the game. You got to figure out how to play the game. That's the reality of the situation. Change is inevitable. You got to figure out how to best handle it.
I predicted that St. Thomas would win a Summit League tournament game. They did do that. So now what's next? I mean, they're coming, and they're going to be, I think, top 4 next year. I think they're in the conversation.
I think
depending on who they lose, right?
I think the first question is, how does this freshman class feel about never being able to play for the NCAA tournament?
Yeah.
I don't like speculating. There's not any inside information, but they have some really good players.
Well, I'll tell you, Andrew Rohde's name's out there as well for the portal. I mean, it just is.
I hate speculating. It's pretty easy to connect some dots to some major players, and he is that level of player. Absolutely, he can. Absolutely, he is that level of player. He could go play in the Big Ten, 100%. But, you know, they're absolutely there's a lot of speculation about the Big East. I 100% agree. I 100%
about St. Thomas going that right now.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. I was shocked they didn't come up with a 6'9" or 6'10" kid out of the portal coming into this year. I mean, if they had to add that type of player to that team, you may be talking about winning more than one game. And so I mean, they're in perfect position. They have the resources, location, everything. There's nothing holding them back from being right at the top of the conference. I mean, it's a great situation for them. Good for the conference for bringing them in.
You think it's a short-term stay in the Summit League? That they're like, when they get that new facility open in a couple of years, then it's, hey, we're looking for greener pastures.
Yeah, I kind of have a unique perspective on that. I'll just say this: I'm fully aware of their opinion that they hold of themselves, and it is not one of Summit League long term. You know, I don't think that there's going to be much difference between them and Marquette in 10 years. You know.
So it's going to be interesting to watch there, especially to get that new facility opening down there. We'll take a break. We have much more with Zach coming up. We'll do that on the other side of the break. Hot Mic rolling on live on location here from the Shack on this Friday morning. We're back after this on WDAY Extra and InForum.com. Well, the sun is at least out as we welcome you back here to Hot Mic on this Friday morning. WDAY Extra, InForum.com. At least we can enjoy the calm before what's ever going to happen here tomorrow. You got some stuff packed. You might be here a lot longer than you anticipated.
I've gotten used to that, driving up to Grand Forks.
Right.
Yeah, seriously, after the first time getting stuck in Grand Forks and having no contact solution and stuff like that,
no.
I just kind of leave something in the bag for that whole
smart man.
Yeah, December, January, February time. Yeah.
The Class B bracket is out. Zach's going to be on the call with Cullen Holt next week in Bismarck. The number 1 seed is Central Cass. They'll play Warwick. They're making their first trip since, I think, 96 to the State B. 2 seed is Shiloh. They'll play Powers Lake, Burke Central. The 3 seed is Beulah. They're back for the first time in a couple years. Jeremy Brandt's team was always really good against Medina, Pingree, Buchanan. And then the late game, the 4-5 game, is Thompson against Des Lacs Burlington to wrap up. They'll have a big crowd there. Thompson, the last time that State was in, that they were at State, they won it in Minot back in 2019. Of course, the State B going back to Bismarck for the first time in 5 years. That's going to be a heck of a. They are so excited. Everybody loves the B in Bismarck. That's going to be a great weekend next week.
The Civic Center. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm biased. I love that facility. I think it's a great host. Everything about it. I just can't wait to get that last one going.
That's going to be fun, and this will be it. I mean, now next year, obviously, we're going to go to 3 classes. This is going to be the last of the B. I'm interested from you as a guy that played high school ball in the state. What do you think of where things are going here?
A lot of mixed emotions, right? I mean, the B is obviously very unique, but the reality is, I'm also very analytical, and I just kind of look at data and just population, demographics, and how things are growing, and also participation rates. I think that's the thing that really caught people's eye. You don't want to get caught up in, so-and-so is making it to state every year. You do want to look at the information. You want to look at the participation rate that was plummeting. And I think that's really kind of a sad, and that's something that I think they're really trying to preserve and making sure that there's good opportunities. And it's just sort of the way the population demographics are playing out, that these 3-class systems is really sort of a better fit for the state, much like pretty much every other state out there.
Yeah. I think is also for some in Class B, and you might roll your eyes at this, that say, we want the private schools out, get them out of get them their own class, and we want to see the true, and this is my words, true Class B teams at the State B. I know this is close to your heart. How do you feel about that?
Well, I can understand some of what they're talking about. I understand that, if you're in a Class A town, you're pulling from a different pool of people, and that there's just more players that could potentially enroll in your school. Now, there's also way fewer kids in the school. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, I mean, you're going to have a school with 30 or 40 kids, play against Century just because they're private. It's like, I don't know. There's some middle ground, and I think that's exactly what this 3-class system is.
I think they found that because initially I think it was punishing the private schools with the multiplier. I think we've reached a happy medium with that, at least in my opinion.
I'm really impressed with the way that they've been able to work through that.
Yep.
I do think it's a very fair compromise for what the situation is. You look at the where every program is going to be, the ability to opt up, things like that. I think it's very fair. I think it's very reasonable. I think it's going to keep, with the whole multiplier, it's maybe not this year, but it could create some situations with other sports and things like that I think a lot of schools are really hoping to stay out of. And so I think this is a good format out of which we can operate. And maybe there's some adjustments here and there. It's probably not going to be perfect, but I think it's a much better format that should lead to a little bit more parity and just a fair competition among schools.
It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. A couple minutes left here with Zach. Okay. I got an email and asked Zach about what Grant Nelson's going to do. I think it's a less than 2% chance he's playing here next year. Where would you put the percentages rates of where he's at next year at this time?
So Grant is, first off, he's an awesome guy. Like, he's a great kid. So here's the thing. Here's the way I view it. Like, he's going to enter the NBA draft, and he's going to go through that process. They're going to tell him he needs to play against better competition. They're going to say that. They say that to everybody in there. The big man lives at the NBA Combine, right? That's what happened to Baylor Shireman. Had no intention of transferring. He's at the NBA draft. Conversations had. Next thing you know, he's at Creighton. Yeah, next thing you know, that's the way this works.
Right.
And I think the great thing about the current situation is, obviously NIL, sometimes it's good, sometimes whatever. But the reality is he can go the Drew Timme route. I think of him as really kind of going the Drew Timme route where he can be BMOC. He can go play big-time college basketball, and he can make the same amount of money as he would on maybe like a two-way contract in the NBA.
Yeah.
I 100% think he's a second-round pick. 100%. Like
now?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I absolutely do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he could. I think if he wanted to stay in the draft, he could. It's just a question of what type of experience he wants and where he'll develop
and
best.
pathway to get to the NBA, right?
Yeah.
I mean, nothing is guaranteed in a second. I mean, there are guys obviously that have made it to the second round, but that is a hard road to hoe if you're going to go do that.
There's a lot of projection going on in the second round. You know, a lot of players that aren't going to play right away. So, like, I think, you know, his combination of size, skill, and athleticism, 100%. He is 100. Like the guys that can pick and pop and switch picks and all that stuff. Like that is what the NBA looks for. He's almost better fit for the NBA than college, quite honestly. So honestly, if I was him, I would go be BMOC at some big time program, go play in the NCAA tournament, make $1 million. You know, but at the same time, like, he loves NDSU.
Yep.
He loves his teammates.
Yep.
He's sitting at the A last night with his teammates.
Yep.
Like, he just loves it, and he's so I'm not shutting the door on that.
Okay.
But I totally understand. Like, if I'm him, I would rather make $1 million playing for Kansas than sitting on the end of a bench in wherever.
In the G League,
in Grand
right?
Rapids,
Yeah.
in the G
Right.
League. You know what I mean? So, like, I think he's also going to develop better there too. So, he's certainly going to have a lot of options. You know, and I'm fun to watch it. But the reality is, you know, I know some people are a lot of concerned about transfers and stuff. We're not concerned about the Grant Nelson situations, the Baylor Shireman situations. Those are stories that we can sell to the recruits coming into the conference. That's not the problem. The problem is the lateral transfers. And so Grant Nelson is a success story of NDSU basketball.
He was developed
and this
here,
conference.
right? He was found, he was developed, and turned into an NBA player. I mean, that's a you can put a recruiting blueprint out to the building here.
There's going to be a huge banner of Grant Nelson out there, right next to Ben Woodside and Luke Mormon sitting out there. You know what I mean? So, like, he's going to be the next one out there, and so that's a success story. I hope it's seen as like that. You know, I hope it's celebrated. And man, you know, if every player produced as much as Grant Nelson did for their teams, nobody would ever lose a game. you know what I mean? So it's just like if that's not Grant Nelson leaving is not the issue, and they're in good hands with the players they have left too.
So you think more often than not he's going to be at a Power 5 next year? If you were a betting man, which I know you are, would you do that?
I would put that bet on it. Yeah. That's without inside information.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's without information.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're obviously going to go into this eyes wide open, and they're going to develop that. You know, I think it's boy, you look at the opportunity to bring him in. Yeah. I mean, you know,
everybody's lining up for that. And I mean, I've been told it's highly recognizable schools that are in the mix. So you can, you can draw your own conclusions from that.
Like,
so.
I'm not exactly. He could go start for Kansas, 100%.
They play Kansas this year. He could probably suit up for them right now.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I put in a call to Notre Dame's bag man. I don't know if he's going to come through or not. I want to see him with the Fighting Irish, but I'm not liking my chances.
See, now that's a perfect segue, because I wanted to ask my last question is who's going to be the next coach for Notre Dame men's basketball? Mike Bray, a legend, is stepping down.
Who do I want?
Yeah,
who do I think?
Who do you want and who do you think?
I mean, I want to aim high. I want to go put a bag of money in front of Jay Wright. I want to go get Greg McDermott.
He's done.
I know,
Jay Wright's done.
I know, but
Greg McDermott, interesting.
I want, Greg McDermott. I think there's a number of guys that could do well. That's the thing about college basketball. There's no shortage of great coaches out there. I mean, there's so many coaches that could go into that situation and do a great job. I mean, you look even in this conference. You know, I mean, this conference, Paul Mills, some whispers out there. Yeah, there's going to be a number of openings he's going to be linked to, and I'm not necessarily worried about who it's going to be. I think it's more about how the programs ran. I think is kind of my number one issue. But I mean, it's going to be a wild couple months here, and we'll see what the dust settles. Maybe in the middle of the summer, and pick up the pieces and put it back together and go have another year next year. So.
What did you think of Marcus Freeman's first year?
You know, I like the type of head coach that is that level of recruiter. I think is absolutely necessary. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a tricky situation when you don't have to recruit only 50 miles within your campus. You know what I mean? You need a guy who's a monster recruiter, and I think that's what he is. And obviously, a little turnover with the coordinator position. Yeah. But I got that Ohio State game circled. I will be there.
Are you going to go?
Oh, of course.
Fantastic.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
I'm not missing Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. Yeah, we'll be there.
Is that first weekend of the year?
No,
when is this one?
It's about a third way through the schedule. So
that's going to be okay. That'll be all right.
We'll be there.
Great to see you, man. As always, doing a great job. We look forward to hearing you and Cullen tonight on the broadcast. Thanks for coming by this morning.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
There he is, Zach Dosch, joining us, and of course he'll be on the call with Cullen Holt tonight, 6:30 for the Class A semifinals, which starts with Davies and Red River. We'll take a break. We come back. The NDSU Hall of Famer, Justin Fletschock, will join us from the High School Association. We got a bunch of questions to ask Fletch. We'll do that. We wrap up our show right after this on Hot Mic on WDAY Extra at InForum.com. Welcome back, everybody, on a sunny Friday to Hot Mike on WDAY Extra, InForum.com. Live shot of Elite Wahpeton down there as we get ready, brace for whatever's to come tomorrow. We're ready for a big day here at the Super A at the Shack. We've got the girls semifinals coming up at 1 and the boys semifinals at 6:30. It's an annual rite of passage to have our next guest join us somewhere on the tournament run. It's great to see. I still call him HOF because he is HOF, NDSU Hall of Famer and the Assistant Director of the North Dakota High School Activity Association, Justin Fletschock. Fletch, how you been, man? It's great to see you. Thanks for giving us some time this morning.
Appreciate it, Dom. Yeah, it's been a busy couple weeks with the weather. The last 15 days has just been awful. I sincerely want to thank all teams, fans, players that have made these journeys because it hasn't been easy, especially last night with our region tournaments. If we didn't get them in last night, I don't think we could have got any of the Western ones in tonight. Right. And then Saturday didn't look good on the east side. Well. So that was, we got Matt and I were pretty happy that when the last buzzer sounded. So, yep.
Everybody got in the clubhouse, and you got all the 8 teams that we now know. You know, it's funny, and it's ironic and strange sitting here on the Friday of the Super A because the last time we were here was such a different time in the world, obviously in 2020. What do you remember? What stands out to you about that day 3 years ago?
Well, going into it, you knew something was coming just because the NCAA or the conference tournaments had been postponing. And once the NCAA got it, started postponing theirs, we're in an NCAA arena here. Then you knew that the colleges might start following suit, and it kind of fell how we thought. I always go back to the story. I had some meetings, some officials meetings in Salt Lake City in early February.
Of 2020, okay.
2020. And I walked through the airport, and that was the first time I thought, oh boy, because there was a lot of masks there. And I remember went in Matt's office when I got back, and I said, boy, I wish we could get our tournaments moved a week earlier, because I felt like that was the timeline where this might fall. But yeah, it was a horrible day that day. Everyone went through it, but I will say that, the way our board responded and playing all of our tournaments the next year really was a success. We were one of 2 states that got all of their tournaments, all their fine arts in 2020-21 school year. So that's a success story. I know it doesn't help the people that were affected here or at the B the next weekend, but I thought we handled it pretty well and did what we could.
And that's why I think next week will be so special, because the B was supposed to be in Bismarck that year. Now it's going back, first time since 2018, and it's the last quote-unquote of the B as we know it. And we did over the brackets here when Zach was on with me, and looking at the 8 teams here, this has the potential to be a really special tournament next week.
Yeah, and we had talked on the break about, I was last night at the Dome keeping one eye on the region championship games and the North Legacy game. And there were 2 or 3 of those that the endings were just special. And it was special in a way of it was kids making shots. And as you know, when we get to those region championship nights, the pressure and the intensity is so high. And to see kids come through like that was really special to watch. And I'm really looking forward to next weekend.
A couple teams that haven't been there in a while. Warwick's been there not since 1996. So that's going to be a 27-year celebration. That'll be pretty good.
Yep, same. Medina, Pingree Buchanan. Pingree Buchanan was there, I think, in 06, but Medina hasn't been there since 94, I believe. I mean, it's been a while. And again, that was one of the teams that, boy, they hit shots down the stretch. And just some classic games. The DLB Bishop Ryan game, overtime, again, just a fantastic game. So we're really excited, and it being the quote-unquote last. I mean, I think that's what people are going to refer to it, because it lasts in its form.
Correct.
And it's been such a special part of our organization and me personally, just because I played in a couple of them and things like that. I just think there's going to be a lot of special moments with people you talk to. I mean, there's people that go there every year.
I've run into them too.
They buy tickets on Monday morning at 9 a.m. when they go on sale in January, and they're there front row, and they come up and talk to you. And so things like that, it's going to be a special weekend.
I have to ask you to take your high school association hat off and put your Central Cass hat back on. How How exciting was that for you last weekend to see what the Squirrels did?
Well, it was
From
exciting.
your time as an AD back then.
It was exciting in a little couple different senses that the games are phenomenal.
Awesome games.
The semifinal night and the championship night were just great games. And then to see shots like Olivia Dick's shot, and I know her dad really well. We played against each other growing up, and I know a lot of those Thompson parents there, a lot of them for the Northeast. And so it just was a great atmosphere, and I thought that both fans were just phenomenal in the way they handled the game and things like that. It really was a special night. Personally, I obviously was involved with Central Cass for a long time. I'm really happy for, and this probably no one has said, but assistant coaches Hannah Bresky and Courtney Dixon both had lost in a couple of state championship games. So, it was nice to see them to be able to get one. But again, I'm very good friends with Jason Bren too, and the things he's done with that Thompson girls program.
Powerhouse there.
Fantastic.
And the Central Cass boys are there, unbeaten #1 seed to the B. This could be a heck of a double here that we could see.
I mean, there's so much to go before Saturday night at 10 o'clock. But, I've watched a lot of these. That's a great thing about streaming. So we talk about the bad part of COVID, but the good part is you can watch a lot of games. And I've watched a lot of Shiloh games and a lot of Beulah and Thompson. I mean, there's some good teams in that tournament. It's going to be fun.
So obviously a lot has happened since the last time you and I chatted. We're talking about 3 classes here as well. It's hard, I know, because you can't have an opinion on this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Are you surprised that this happened as quick as it did, and it's going to happen next year for 3 classes?
No, because I think once our board said, yep, we're going to do a 3-class system, I think if we would have waited a year, it really would have been unfair to a lot of teams because let's take a Wahpeton or a Devil's Lake or whoever. Well, them knowing that the next year they're going to be year down, and if you're a senior next year at those schools and you think, wow, if we were a class lower, we would have had a good chance. Same thing with the smaller schools that are in the bottom division and they're competing against the middle. So I think it solves a lot of issues we may have had by having it next year. So I mean, there's other things that we can't control as far as facilities and things like that. We're going to do the best with what we got.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people are aware next year the NCAA calendar is actually a week later. So a lot of our venues that we usually use for state tournaments and even for boys regions might not be available. So it's going to be just a little bit different.
So I asked Matt about that because that's the next hurdle for you guys over the next, I'd say, month is to finalize the facilities of where you're going to use these extra tournaments. What is, I know Jamestown is in the mix, going back to Minot. Can you expound a little bit about that?
So we're set for the Jamestown Civic next year for B girls. And people, just to put this out there, people have asked, well, why aren't we playing at Neumann?
Yes.
Well, we can't guarantee that Newman's big enough. And so until we know what that crowd's going to be, we can't necessarily put it in a spot that's too small. It's kind of like what we did with the Betty before we took the B girls there. We had to take some data like, okay, can we fit this? And we were able to tightly, but we were able to. And same thing with the middle division boys we have for the Fargo Dome next year. And people are like, well, let's put it in the Shack. Well, yeah, the Shack holds about 5,000, and if I'm throwing teams out there. Let's say we have Devil's Lake, Wahpeton, Central Cass, Turtle Mountain, or whatever in that semifinal night. I don't know that this building's big enough, but we'll play at the Fargo Dome. We'll see if it's big enough, and if it is, we'll bring it over here.
And we can adjust. You can adjust for that, like you did. I mean, for years it was at the Alaris Center for the girls, and then you moved it over to the Betty, and then I think that was a huge success story. Certainly
huge.
Financially, I know it was a huge success story as well.
And I mean, you talk to people from Grand Forks, the workers at the Betty that have been there forever, and they're like, "That we've never seen anything like this." I mean, they really enjoyed it.
So I'm interested. You were talking about the fans who buy tickets right away. That I'm interested, Fletch, about what they do because of where they choose to go. Because I've gone to the B every year, but now is it the A that I'm going to go to? I'm interested on how that is going to work out next year.
And maybe it might be their geography.
Right.
Whatever's closest to them, where they like to go watch games. Do they want to go to Bismarck or they don't want to go to Fargo? I think that's going to play a role in it. Also a little bit of each personal history of what they have with ties to teams. But I still think we will get that. I don't think there's I think there was a lot of people talking about negatives of making changes or whatever. I think there's going to be way more positive. So when I look at situations like that,
it's really easy to be negative about everything these days. It's really hard to get on board with an idea. And I'm not trying to shill for our company or for you guys in association. I'm I've been in favor of this since I heard it, and the revised plan, I think, is the best one. The initial one, I thought, okay, this one is, I think, it's palatable, I think, to everybody. There's something that I think everybody can take from it.
Yep, I really haven't had much negative feedback with what's been passed by our board. I think everyone's ready to give it a try.
Yep.
And it's simple to see. I think everyone can see that the population trends in our state have really shifted.
Yes.
It's just different. And so I don't think anyone doesn't see that. Everyone I've talked to is like, all right, let's do this and let's see what happens. So it's good.
I only one request. Can we somehow play the last weekend of March? Can we space it out a little bit? I know spring sports, but I'm looking outside, and you and I have disagreed on this in the past, but that last weekend in March is sitting there that –
yeah.
Is that something maybe in a couple years you get some data on that and could maybe
I don't think
move?
we would. I think people are ready to move on to the next season when we get to that weekend. You know, traditionally that's the NCAA tournament weekend, which next year it's not. This year it is. And that's when they want that done. I've never had schools ask to play later. But I will say, I think Matt had talked to you about scheduling is a big issue because we're going to have a lot of interdivision games. And if you don't have the right divisions next to each other, and then we're eliminating a couple weeks of the schedule when they can play. So,
all right. I have to ask you, since you're as big a baseball guy as I know, what do you make of everything that baseball has done, and what the early feedback from games watching in spring training so far?
Love the pitch clock.
Yeah.
I don't know the people that are arguing this I don't understand it. We had the pitch clock.
Arguing against it, you mean? Okay.
We actually had the pitch clock in the Northern League for a year, and people probably don't even remember it. And I only remember one time it was an issue where it was a batter that was upset about a call. He didn't get in the box, and the called strike 3 on him. Didn't follow the rules.
Yeah.
I mean, it's plain and simple. That's what happened. But it's such a – they talk about losing interest, and TV games are tough to watch.
Yes.
They are very if you're at the game, you can it's fine. I have no problem with it. TV games with the amount of downtime, and of course, the video of Baez pitching in the NLCS where you have 4 Altuve inside the park home runs, and then or this year the guy had a complete inning where it took to throw one pitch. That is a positive. They need to get rid of that stuff, and it's just gotten worse and worse.
Yes.
You go back to Garcia Parra, he was evidently
endless.
Yes, adjusting the bag gloves. But people don't understand. Now the pitches are just as bad. I mean,
adjusting,
and,
moving.
So
you're right.
That's a positive. The bases.
I'm not a fan of the base thing. I don't get that one.
And I see it as a person who we're in charge of a game below it. High school, where are these high schools going to want that? And they all have to buy new bases?
I mean,
and adjust their fields because, I mean, they got to move the plugs and stuff like that. I don't know. The shift rules, I'm with or without it. It blows my mind that
nobody can go the other way anymore.
That major league hitters never adjusted. I mean,
I know.
But I'm old school.
No, I'm with you, man. I don't get it either. It's just bizarre to me that nobody can go the other way with the ball.
And not only the other way, but they don't change their swings.
Bunt.
They don't change their swings with 2 strikes at all.
That's true.
When you were a kid growing up, you got 2 strikes. All right, let's shorten up, put it in play. That's gone. That's so far gone.
I am interested, though, that you see the game times going down to 2 hours, 15 minutes, 2 hours, 20. I'm on board with that. As opposed to 3 hours and 45 minutes for a 9-inning game, sign me up for that. I'm down with that.
And where it'll really be noticeable is in the postseason. Because those postseason games have gotten
interminable.
To be. Yep, it's bad. And, I mean, hopefully the Twins make a postseason and win a postseason game. But around here, that's what most people are watching, those postseason games. And you're losing a lot of your marquee. I mean, when you have the Dodgers and the Astros, I mean, that is as good as it gets. And people are just like, I'm going to bed.
Right. You're not going to watch.
No.
How about your boy Coaster winning the American Association Championship? How exciting was that?
That was awesome. And the game itself.
Yes, the game that they won it.
The way they won it. It was awesome. Chris has done such a great job. And, that job is more than just on the field managing. People don't understand. When you're part of a minor league organization, you're probably taking out the trash. You're finding players. You're not
chalking the line sometimes.
And so for that to all end with him winning that, just fantastic.
It's great to see you, man. Thanks for doing this. I love it when we get a chance to chat every year. I know you're a busy man. Enjoy the rest of this weekend and have fun out in Bismarck next week. I know you will. Justin Fletschock, Hall of Famer, North Dakota State, of course, Assistant Director of the North Dakota High School Activities Association. We're due for our final break. We'll come back. We'll get you set for the TV lineup for today and put a bow on our show. We'll do that with Hot Mike Raps right after this on WDAY Extra at InForum.com. Welcome back, everybody, to Hot Mic as we get ready to say so long on this Friday. A reminder of our schedule today, which you can stream the consolation games over the Fargo Dome. They're beginning at noon, and 2, 4, and 6. Those games at the Fargo Dome, you can see them on WDAY Sports Plus at InForum.com. The semifinals begin 1 o'clock on ABC. WDAY for the girls semis, led off by Cheyenne, and as they'll take on Bismarck Century, followed by the 3 o'clock game, West Fargo and Grand Forks Red River. We're back in prime time at 6:30 tonight with the boys semifinals. Davies and Red River will lead off, and they'll be followed by Bismarck Century and Fargo North in the second game at about 8:30 for game number 2. And then tomorrow, championship Saturday, you'll see the girls and boys 5th and 3rd place games from the Dome. Actually, I think everybody's over here at the Shack tomorrow for the final day. And then the championship game at 6 for the girls on ABC, followed by the boys championship at 8 o'clock. A great night of hoops set to come tonight and tomorrow night on WDAY. Really excited about that. Our crew had a great day yesterday, and we're really excited about what's to come tonight, which should be 2 really good games on both the girls and the boys side. Let's get you ready for what to watch before we get out of here. Shameless self-promotion. We're going to tell you about what's happening on our air tonight. Of course, we have the girls semis beginning at 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock here at the Shack. That first game features Century against Cheyenne. Cheyenne looking to get to its first state championship game. Century, trying to get back and win this. Remember, they lost last year in the championship game, trying to win a second title in 3 years. Heck, a 4th in 5 years for Century. The boys semifinals begin at 6:30 tonight on WDAY. Davies, Red River, followed by Century, who's unbeaten. The Bismarck Century boys have yet to lose against the Fargo North boys. You heard Zach Dosch say, well, watch those North boys. They have a ton of athleticism. That should be really intriguing to see how that plays out. Also, postseason hockey begins tonight for the University of North Dakota. They're at Omaha. Game 1 of the best-of-3 series against the Mavericks, 7 o'clock on Midco tonight. That's 2 out of 3. You got to win 2 to advance on to the Frozen Face-Off, which is down in St. Paul next week. We'll have highlights of all these games coming up on our news tonight at 6 and at 10. Repeating our top story when we started the show, the Minnesota Vikings have released Adam Thielen. They made it official, ending his 10-year run in Minnesota as one of the all-timers for the Minnesota Vikings. We mentioned that off the top of the show. There's no doubt about it. He will be remembered as such, and now the intrigue begins on where he's going to play his football in 2023. But he is done as a member of the Vikings. Much more on that as well coming tonight in our news at 6 and at 10. Thanks to our guests today, to Rick Neumann, Zach Dosch, Justin Fletschock, to our great crew for making this happen, both at the studio downtown, of course, to our truck crew as well. We appreciate that. We'll see everybody coming up at 1 o'clock, and we're back in studio in Monday to recap a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday, everybody. Have a great weekend. We're back here at 1 o'clock for the girls' semifinals.